Hi, I'm Patti Parker, and you are listening to My Friends in Philanthropy. Our mission is to make nonprofit stories more accessible to the people who need their services, to the volunteers who give their time, and to the donors who make it all possible. Join us as we celebrate community impact through authentic, inspiring conversations. Hi, everybody. It's Patti Parker with My Friends in Philanthropy. Today, I have my friend, Neli Rowland. She's in the Chicago area, which you guys know I grew up, so I have a big heart for Chicago. But I'm also very aware of the challenges. Unfortunately, you hear all the bad news on the news. That's not Chicago, not most of it. So Neli has done some wonderful work. She's got like a 30-year track history of improving. I'll just let you go. You go, Neli. What are you doing these days?
Okay. Well, I'll finish that sentence for you. Yes, I have a 30-year history of really, believe it or not, Patty and I share a background. I was in investments for about 13 years. And during that time, it was important to my husband and I, as we started having children, to give back and make a difference. And as we were looking around for different types of charities to give to, the one that cause that really spoke to us was the issue, believe it or not, of substance abuse and poverty and homelessness. And the reason is because our family had overcome very difficult circumstances, as first generation Americans, as you can imagine, both on his side and my side. I'm first generation Mexican and he's first generation Irish. Both families came to this country.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm probably his cousin. Okay, go ahead.
Rowland, look it up,
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
small island, But, the beauty of it is that we both love our culture and we embrace, where our families came from. We are true Americans, and the fact that we wanted to really honor our family's legacy as they came to America in search of the American dream, that we wouldn't squander that, right? Then we would try to build off of that dream as they provided for our families as best they could. We were fully aware, and it wasn't lost on us, how close we were, to, poverty, right? Because of the fact that, it wasn't easy, just put it that way. So as we were grateful for the opportunity to work in the world of finance, our lives changed dramatically. And we were finally in a position to give back and make a difference. And as we started looking at organizations that were involved in these types of causes, it was confusing to us that there were no organizations that were really focused on trying to solve root causes. We knew people were in crisis, but it wasn't enough to give them a meal. It wasn't enough to give them a place to sleep at night. And at the time, back in 1994, that's all that really existed. So for us, we were grateful to know that, hey, we can do a little better, and we decided to build it ourselves. So we started investing in real estate. We had an interest in investing in bricks and mortar in 1994. We're coming out of a recession. I was investing in REITs, and I said, why not? Let's just buy some buildings, gut them, renovate them, turn them into the crown jewel of the community. That way nobody will get mad at us when we decide to let people that are homeless or coming out of prison and veterans, included, live in these buildings. And of course, we gave them some rules and said, you're going to get a beautiful apartment. You're going to get a safe place to live. We're going to hire people to help you, but you have to follow some rules. And we were pretty strict about those rules. And lo and behold, Patty, it was the most beautiful thing to see. A woman come with her children that had nowhere to go, maybe escaping a domestic violence situation, have her own apartment with her children, or again, a veteran coming home and having another roommate that maybe was another veteran, get their lives back on track and predictably surrounding them with all the right type of environment that was conducive to recovery. Right. Magically, we saw their lives transformed and we watched them become positive, productive members of society. We knew that there were a lot of barriers to employment, though. No matter what we did to get their lives back on track, there weren't enough places that were willing to hire them because they had backgrounds, right? Or they had a track record. So we started businesses, so we started a landscaping company, a staffing business we acquired, and a catering business because we trained people to work in these fields and said, why not start. At the time, it wasn't even a word for it. Today, they're known as social enterprises. Tell
the viewers here, what is a social enterprise?
So for us, the business was really designed around taking people with limited work histories and putting them into an environment where they can learn, be trained to work in real time, and get paid to work in a career that would be a transitional job, and allow them to have something finally on their resume that they could use to
Yeah.
be mainstreamed. Well, a lot of people that we hired to work in these businesses, social enterprises, which were meant to be transitional jobs, but also an additional sustainable revenue stream for the
Yeah.
nonprofit. For
Mhm.
us was really beautiful to see that many people did move on and live positive, productive lives. And some even started their own businesses after that, which was awesome to see. But many of them even chose to move up the ranks and become
Oh, so what's
managers,
okay.
and directors,
Wow.
and throughout all of the different entities, which included um, the social services, which was the
Uh-huh.
foundation, a nonprofit, social enterprises, and our arm, which was the real estate arm, which did everything from, real estate, property, land acquisition to arranging the financing to doing the property, the building and the property management.
Wow.
We had
That was
people.
quite the undertaking. But
Yeah.
I
So
love how you expanded. So, you guys, what I'm hearing Nellie say, and very eloquently, is she saw a problem. She went into her own wheelhouse of what she was used to doing and created a solution, and then saw the other problem, created and created and created. So, you guys know this is for those who need help, those who give help, and those who help the helpers. Nellie's kind of a hybrid of that, in that she helps the helpers while at the same time helping those who need help, right? Okay. I just want to make clear where she's at in our little scope of being.
Well, to kind of put a little bow on it,
Yeah, please.
I actually started to call it a vertically integrated ecosystem. That by
Explain
his,
that. That sounds fascinating.
yeah, so everything operated under one umbrella,
Uh-huh.
network. And again, it was everything from social services and everything that comes with that in terms of providing wraparound services,
Uh-huh.
housing that was conducive to every stage of their, let's call it recovery, from transitional, supportive, affordable, senior, and military veteran housing that we either built and acquired throughout the last 30 years, to economic development, right? So it was social development and economic development by getting
Right.
them on a path to employment and economic independence. Now, not everyone's going to be employed. Okay. So we are realistic, and that some
Uh-huh.
people are going to need help, for the rest of their lives. Seniors, people that may have disabilities, mental
Yeah.
health issues. So we created an environment for them to move on where they can get access to the type of supportive funding and services that they needed, but also supportive housing, right? In senior housing and veteran
This is really
housing.
smart.
Yeah. So for us, it was not only about helping people move out of poverty and homelessness and crisis situations, but how do we keep them from falling back into the depths of despair that they were in?
Right.
And what we found is that people are people. We didn't try to differentiate people by race, religion, or even what economic strata they came from,
Yeah.
because believe it or not, Patty, I mean, to us, my husband and I, this was really intuitive because again, our families had gone through much, right? And
You
we
lived
knew,
it. You lived
yeah,
it, or at least close to it.
yeah, close to it, or we knew people that were
Uh-huh.
in these situations, and having
Right.
gone through it and having seen where the gaps were, we knew how important it was to really also, mainly, the most important thing that was missing, which when we were doing our research and trying to find out what charity to give to, was the belief that because people are in crisis doesn't mean that's who they are.
Oh,
That just
say
means.
that over. Say that over. We need to hear that.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, as
Yeah.
people, we found that people that are in crisis are not a homogenous population. They aren't all in crisis, believe it or not, because they're drug addicts. They aren't all in crisis because they have some type of like, schizophrenia, and can't be managed. They're in crisis for many, many different reasons.
Yep.
And you have to get to the root cause as to why they're in the situation they're in and believe that that is not the place that they belong and that there is a place for them that is much higher level than where they are today. But you have to instill that belief in them and let them know. Many heard for the very, very first time from us and my entire amazing team that they have gifts, and it's our job to help them find them, nurture them, develop them, and put them on the path that's going to help them achieve their highest level of independence. And, again, some people will always need help, and we got them to their highest level of independence, which provided those services and supportive housing, which
Mhm.
is going to keep them in a safe place, right? And dignified place to live, right? But
Right.
also, we have stories. Patty, I did this for 30 years. I have stories of people that became multimillionaires,
That's amazing.
after they were able to deal with the setback. So,
Mhm.
I just know that so many people, the setback was really the setup to getting them to their highest level of success. And they didn't squander it, just like I started out this conversation, with my parents and
Yep.
Brian's parents bringing us to this country, and we knew we were given an opportunity, and our goal was never to squander it and to make them proud of us. The same thing happened with the people that we helped. So many of them did not squander that second chance, and they made the most of it. And I'm proud to say that I'm in touch with many of them today, even though I don't do this work anymore. We are continuing to be focused on investing in real estate. Chicago, like many cities across the country, are experiencing major gaps in housing. And the best way to keep someone from becoming homeless is to make sure there's enough housing. It's like musical
Yeah.
chairs. I mean, if you don't have enough
I see
houses,
building after building after building of apartments going up. And I think most of us don't realize the situation. They don't see the need. We see all these apartments like, where are they coming from? Right? But there's need. There's need. And what you were able to do was keep them safe in housing, but give them hope, right? And not just, hey, here's a story, have hope, then taking them down the path to achieve those things. I love you. You know that.
oh,
But
thank you. Well, you know what the
so
most beautiful thing was is like we didn't really have to say too much because
really, yeah,
when people walked in the door, they saw hope and they saw opportunity walking everywhere they went. I mean, there were people that, were with us for walking in the door and met people that were with us for 3 months and heard their stories and said, oh my God, if it can happen for you, it can happen for me. So
yeah,
many of the people, as I told you, that moved up the ranks within our organizations, all of them were people that came in the door that were once homeless. And now they're running things, so it was
it's
beautiful
lovely.
for them to be really that inspiration because it wasn't like someone like me, thankfully, who's never been through anything like that, telling them,
Yeah.
it was someone that actually went through what they went through or worse, telling them that
Mhm.
success is within reach. And that's
Are you
believable.
familiar with these kind of communities? Not exactly what you did, but similar across the country. I do work with Orange County Rescue Mission, and
Mhm.
they have something adjacent to what you're doing. But,
Okay.
you know, remember, this is for those who need help first. So, how can we help someone who's listening right now? If you're in this situation and you live in Des Moines, Iowa or something, is there like a central phone base? Is there something like that?
Unfortunately, there isn't. So what I
Okay.
did do, what
That'll
I
be the
did,
next thing you do.
yeah. So, for me, my dream, which is yet to be achieved in this space, is is to see this issue addressed in a way that really, again, thinks about an integrated ecosystem. Like, how do we, by design, create and scale, an ecosystem so that in every city, no matter where you are, you could walk in the door and the people behind that door know exactly what needs to happen because everybody's case is different, and what path they need to design for that individual to get to where they need to go. Now, I did write a book. I
Oh,
haven't
tell me,
published.
do you have a copy?
I don't have it with me, darn.
Oh, okay.
But I'm hoping to publish it. I'm looking for a major publisher to help me
Oh, it's not
get it
published
out
yet.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not published yet. It is really the playbook, that we basically designed. There was no playbook, as you can imagine, when we started back in 1994,
Hmm.
of what we were thinking. There was no such thing about, solving root causes. There was no conversations around the opiate epidemic. There was no such thing as social enterprises. There was no such thing as veteran housing. I believe we were the first organization to work with the VA to design a transitional supportive affordable housing model specifically for veterans. I was working in Washington, D.C., advocating for that with many of the agencies as we saw so many people coming to us that had formerly worn a military uniform. My husband is a veteran. My husband's father was a Korean decorated war veteran. So
Uh-huh.
for us, it was personal, and I'm really proud to say that we were able to become the first organization to get funded in 2010 when President Obama with General Shinseki put money out there for the very first time to help military veterans. And we became the first organization to receive those funds and partner with the VA in Chicago to make that delivery system happen in partnership with the VA, which was unheard of, so
Uh-huh.
that's something I'm super, super proud of having accomplished. But again, lots of lessons learned, having worked with the criminal justice system, having worked with the VA, having worked with youth, aging out of the system, domestic
Oh, yeah.
violence, you name it. So because there's no playbook, I decided to write this book and said, if I can get this book out there with a major publisher and introduce it to people like you, Patti, and people out there
Uh-huh.
that are curious and interested, not just in helping, you know, feed someone, but how do we help solve it? And the next thing is, how do we help prevent it from happening in the first place? And that's
True.
what this talks about. And I think
Okay.
that there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest right now. And I think it's a disruptive moment for better or for worse. Government right now is looking at everything with fresh eyes. And
Hmm.
I think we can't afford the system that we've had. We can all agree that things have gotten out of control
Yeah.
and we're not seeing enough positive outcomes with all of our agencies, whether it's education, healthcare, you
Yeah.
name it. So
Yeah.
what can we do differently that is based on a proof of concept? Very important. You
Hmm.
need to have a proof of concept to
Oh, yeah.
really get behind things. And I think that for too long, so many ideas have come out of a vacuum and only to find out, for example, the idea of, hey, in 1994, which is one of the issues that we looked at that prompted our decision to do something about it. When we passed those laws that said 3 strikes, you're out, and people that had substance abuse issues were going to end up serving lots of time in prison instead of getting treatment. For
Yeah.
us, we knew that was going in the wrong direction. So lo
Right.
and behold, 30 years later, we now know that it was one of the catalytic moments, well intended, that caused mass incarceration.
Yeah.
So for us, we saw the writing on the wall. As finance people, we follow the money. And if you're incentivizing, building prisons and not incentivizing getting help and getting people employed,
Yeah.
and permanently housed, then what do you think is going to happen? So I
Yeah.
believe that, hopefully this book gets published soon. Again, I'm looking
I
for a
want a
publisher.
copy.
Yes. But I think that, it is, I believe, not the answer for everyone.
Uh-huh.
But I do think it provides an answer for us. It helped over 140,000 people.
Yeah.
Over 70% of the people, came out on the other side,
Yeah.
with tremendous success. And I know that it needs to be perfected. But this book will get you 90% there.
Well,
And
and accommodated for whatever location,
yeah,
so
people,
this is somebody in Nebraska, this is somebody
exactly.
in New Mexico, right? But it at least gives you an idea, because I have to believe people who are listening, again, those who need help, those who give help, those who help the helpers. So I'm talking to those who help the helpers, right? Maybe it's not in your wheelhouse to take her book and start a project and you're nearby, but you know people who could if they had the money, right? So, I I'm not allowed to talk about that on here. However, you can drop a note on my website and we can reach you. But when I first start doing a philanthropic plan or a charitable plan with people, I ask two questions. Do you want or need the tax deduction? And do you want or need income from this? Right? And you understand this. It goes in two different directions. I mean, there's so much flexibility. When I'm doing estate planning as a certified financial planner, I'm not an attorney, but when I'm helping them with their estate plan, it's really sad that
Mhm.
people don't know all the things that they can do. So that's our job as advisors. Sit down, what are you trying to accomplish? Because most of the time it can be done, right? Whether you're talking to an advisor in New Jersey or an estate planner in New York, whatever. So I just love what I'm hearing about the hope that you're giving, the hope that you had given to this population, but now you want to help those who can maybe do it on a broader scale,
Mhm.
right? So it's not
Mhm.
just Chicago. You're like, here's my book, here's the plan, go to Detroit, tweak it for your own ideas. Um, I just love it. I'm sorry, I just love it too much.
Yeah. I think that it's, every city, every state, has different um, infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer of reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, if there's someone that's already doing it, I want to see them.
Use what you
I would
have
like
in
for them,
place.
yeah, I would like for them to, if there's ideas in this book that can help them do what they're doing better, bigger, with
Yeah.
more, predictable outcomes,
Yeah.
then they'll love this book, right? And I think that, the people that are in the field, when we first came in, it was unheard of too to have people that had business backgrounds, to kind of go into this space.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, many people that were in the field had we loved, they had the biggest hearts in the world. But we realized that they really weren't business people and they really weren't thinking about, how do we heal root causes in a way that's going to get people back into the workforce and into permanent housing, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Many times their funding was very limited, where all they can do is have a place for people to sleep at night. And that's all their funding allowed them to do. Even if they
And
wanted
during the day, they
just,
they had to go somewhere
just
else and
wander the
come back at night.
streets. Yeah, just
I
wander
don't
the
know if
streets.
I don't know if you all know that, but I've done enough work in this area. I was shocked. I was in Atlanta and Safe House Atlanta, which I love you guys. Um, but it was just normal for all these other housing facilities, for lack of a better term. They'll give you some place to sleep at night, which is desperately needed, especially in the winter. However, during the daytime, you're expected to get up and try to go get some work and try to improve your surroundings, improve whatever. But then with very, very little guidance. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh no. If you just remember the movie Pursuit of Happiness,
What
right?
is it?
Yeah. Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
I know it. I know it. Yep.
Okay. That really gives you a good, understanding of what it was like in 1994. It was a place where he would rush at night with his son, try to get into a shelter. He had to be there by 7 o'clock because if he missed that and if the beds were full, then he was SOL and left out on the street and forced to live, in train stations or something, and sleep at train stations. That's
Yep.
exactly what it was like. And it's just interesting how life, makes sense, in retrospect. But I actually went to a high school in downtown Chicago. Believe it or not, right next door was a homeless shelter. So as I would arrive in my, at the train station and come out of the train station that was let out right in front of my high school, I
Uh-huh.
would walk through a bunch of homeless people to get to class, you know,
Yeah.
and they were letting out at 7 in the morning. And these people had nowhere to go. And I didn't understand homelessness at the time. And I think that
Sure.
I judged them like most people judge them, like, why don't they just get a job? Or why don't they just stop doing drugs? Why do they keep drinking?
Yeah.
Do they like living this way? It's cold outside,
Yeah.
and
It's
I didn't
miserable.
understand it at all. And, it was, I think, partially because of that experience too, and being exposed and trying to figure out why people would make decisions to want to live on the streets in the
Uh-huh.
way that they were living in squalor and, race to get a bed at night where it was like musical chairs. It just made no sense. So I was exposed to it in high school, and I never forgot, what that looked like. And when I approached the idea of giving back, my husband and I approached the idea of giving back and making a difference. We did it just the exact same way we would any investment. You
Right.
talk about estate planning and people are thinking about where they want to give their money. For us, we worked hard for our money. We wanted to make sure that we gave it to a place that was going to really make a difference and an impact in people's lives.
Sure.
So as we started looking at the landscape of charities, places that gave people food, places that gave people a place to sleep at night were wonderful. And like you said, they're needed. But I
Uh-huh.
was like, what's missing is that there's nobody out there that's really trying to solve it.
Right.
And how can you get your life back on track if you're trying to do this on your own and you're not going, you're not getting access to treatment or GED classes or job training and a
Yeah.
place that you can call home that is going to be a place that predictably is going to be a place where you can wake up every morning, take a shower, feel good about yourself, right? So that was so important for us to make sure that we provided every element of what's needed. And, I can't tell you, Patty, that I'm a social worker. I can't tell you that I'm a psychologist or psychiatrist. I didn't go to school for this, but
Right.
I do remember a class that I took, and that was Psychology 101. And for me, the Maslow hierarchy of needs made so much sense.
Yeah,
It made so much sense. So
it does.
if I look back, in terms of what we really designed and the work that we were doing was really based on the hierarchy of needs. And in
Uh-huh.
nowhere in those hierarchy of needs do we decide that we're going to differentiate people by categories. For me, people used to tell me, wow, you walk into your place, Nellie, and it looks like a city within a city because it did reflect the population, right? It was
Right.
like, if you were Muslim or Jewish or Christian or, you know, whatever background, whatever age, you're allowed to come and live with us because that is reality. And even domestic violence victims, so many people thought it was inappropriate for us to have domestic violence victims in a place with, the other sex. Yeah, they did have different wings, but, they had to do classes together and they had to do trainings together, and they actually had to have lunch together. And I thought, it's worse to isolate. It's worse to isolate people and have them
Yeah.
live in fear of the opposite sex, right? I mean, they need to learn. And these were classes that we gave in terms of how to communicate with each other, how to be respectful, how to be considerate, and that was something
You
that I
made
felt was
such a
necessary.
difference. I'm sorry we've got to wrap up for time.
Mhm.
I could talk
Mhm.
to you for 3 hours, and we have. But but if you had speaking to people that you used to take in as housing, speaking people who are hurting, people who have needs, what few seconds of conversation could you have with them that you are giving them hope? What would you suggest they do? What is their next step?
Well, first of all, as I said before, their situation doesn't define them, and it's the behavior that we need to focus on. It's not a moral, bankruptcy, it is clearly something that maybe has not been diagnosed, or has been diagnosed. And even though, for example, the issue I tell people with substance abuse,
Uh-huh.
I say it can't be cured. There's no cure for it. But the great news about it is that it can be managed. And if you can learn how to live in recovery, then the sky's the limit. And I
Yeah.
have met so many people that were, affected by the issue of substance abuse and alcoholism that
Yeah.
today are crushing it, And so I do believe that no matter who you are, where you come from, what you've been through, there is hope And I can guarantee you, with the right kind of help and the right kind of support and the right mindset and being open-minded, to and open to help, that, there is a great life waiting for them on the other side.
That's good to know. Because I know people on the street are suffering, but so are their families, you know.
And I want those families to know that, there is hope because, when someone in the family is impacted, it affects everyone in the family.
Yep.
And it is a family disease, or a family problem when one person, and it doesn't matter, if you haven't seen this person in 5 years, it hurts. It always hurts, especially mothers, especially siblings and fathers, I'm babysitting my grandchild, right? I'm like, all I want is the best for that child. We're going to protect them and do everything we can. And
Yep.
every parent, no matter where you come from, wants that for their child. And I think that, my hope is, that, we all think this way. And even though maybe it's not our child, it's somebody's child,
Oh, yeah.
so let's look at them as if they were our own and treat them as if they were our own, which is really the way I looked at everybody that walked in the door of our organization. And the beauty of it is
Sure.
my staff did too. It's like this is someone's long lost child, long lost sibling, long lost friend, and it's, or spouse, and it's our job to put them back together and hopefully reunite them again. And that's what we did, for tens of thousands of people. And
I
that's what
love
I hope
that.
to continue to do. And again, right now, we're inviting people to invest with us.
Okay.
We are acquiring properties. We're adding affordable housing components to the properties that we do acquire, and we're showing our investors a higher rate of return, which is what investors deserve. For me,
Yeah.
it's so important that everybody wins, right? People
Yeah.
get a nice, beautiful place to live, a place that they can afford to live in, an environment that's safe and, conducive to success for them and their children,
Right.
and our investors to get rewarded for that. And
Which this is not a part of my friends in philanthropy.
no,
The
no,
SEC would be mad at me. So
rewarding and feeling good about it,
I
So
know,
there's
but you're going to have a link on the bottom of the screen to go to
yes,
your website, right?
yes.
So if somebody thinks, "Oh, that would be interesting," maybe I'll contact Nellie. So don't ask me, ask her.
That's right.
Disclosure.
Patty is not involved in any way in the work that we're doing other than helping promote and get the word out because, she knows a lot of people that are looking for ways to, support the helpers and support the
Uh-huh.
people that are doing the work. And there's a way for your, one of the mottos that my husband and I had, we first started, with the idea of investing in real estate. It wasn't all altruistic. We said, hey, we can help some people and hopefully our investments will provide us a return down the road. Even
Yeah.
though the people that we lived in our properties didn't pay any rent or anything, we said there's another way to make money in real estate, and that's through capital appreciation. So that was
Yeah.
for us, the reward down the road. But the biggest reward was, knowing that our money was, going to a place that was helping people. And there's no price on that. And that's something we're always going to feel good about and we'll continue to feel good about. And I invite people to go to our website, kmapm.com, to learn more about the work that we're doing and, building more capacity and more housing for people that, we want to prevent from ever falling into the throes of despair because they can't afford to live in a
Yeah.
place that is safe and healthy.
So for those of you listeners who have heard me do different interviews with different people, you need to know that the homeless issue, especially for veterans, is near and dear to my heart. My father died when I was 14 and he was homeless. So I was adopted by his parents, had a wonderful life, loved him dearly, but he was severely addicted the whole time I knew him. And he didn't want to be. He tried. He tried. He tried. He tried. And somebody got a phone call that my dad was found in a hotel, an overnight spot, and he had died.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do the best I can for people like Nellie, and I want people to know that if they're out and they feel like there's no hope whatsoever, there are these places. I mean, it's not just Nellie in Chicago. There's places elsewhere. And if you can find your way to get to somebody who's running an organization, or just ask for help, because there's help to be had. Don't give up. Don't give up. It can be better. It really can. And don't give up. So we have to wrap up. Sorry for the personal note there, but I thought it was,
Patty, I want to thank you for sharing because I do think that, so many people, again, there's the biggest obstacle that we faced throughout the years was really the stigma,
yeah, yeah,
associated with the disease is, call it of homelessness, right? Because nobody in their right mind makes a decision to do this, right? So
right.
obviously something is off. But I also want to let, people in the philanthropic community to do their homework like we did, and don't settle for just looking at 990s. Get a hold of those finances and make sure that money is going where it needs to go. And those financials are solid, and ask a professional to take a look at them because, just like, I felt like, the work we were doing, I was as a finance professional was so important that,
Uh-huh.
we can endure any kind of financial scrutiny because of course our backgrounds, right? But I don't know if every single organization that can tell a good story, lives up to those,
Yeah.
expectations. So
And there's going to be a spot on my friends in philanthropy.com to, you know, charity navigator and guide. And there's more than one organization that will share the, they've done the research on the financials, right? Because ordinary Joe is not going to open up a tax document to figure it out. But
well, I hope that they do because, I'm grateful for those rating services, but they do not look at the audits. They are everybody's self-reports. So I think it's
yeah,
super important to look at those audits and make sure they're audited financials and
okay.
um and have a professional look at them because too often times, I've seen organizations with, again, a great story, just give the industry a bad name. And, um, and again, so important. Look at those financials, look at the audited financials, and have a professional ask the questions.
You've mentioned a few times to have a professional. What kind of professional are you
An
suggesting?
accountant. I would ask an
Okay.
accountant because, there's a lot of line items that
Uh-huh.
oftentimes people would just kind of, glance over and not even worry about it. And
Uh-huh.
it's so important that that money stays within the charity and is not diverted in any way whatsoever. So I'm just very conscientious of, having
Sure.
seen, some of these things happen and, the person that's the philanthropist, just he has to be aware. And that's what we did, and
Yeah.
again, in doing our own research and finding out that, not everything is, what it appears. And just like you do a stock, right? In any
Uh-huh.
investment, you're going to look at those financials. You're going to have a professional explain them to you. And that's true for the nonprofit world, because today, one of the fastest growing businesses around the country, I know here in Illinois, we have 82,000 nonprofits, right?
Really?
So
Okay.
for me, it's like, again, I never like to reinvent the wheel. If someone's doing work out there that's already, close to what you're looking for,
Sure.
then, do the research, and give them your support. But not without the research and making sure
Yeah.
that go beyond the rating services. I'm just going to tell you that for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, we got to say goodbye to everybody. Um, Nellie, would you be so kind to let me do this again next year?
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. Anytime, Patty. Thank
Well,
you.
I just want
I,
to, let people know what's next, because believe me, with Nellie, there's always a what's next.
Well, you had asked me before where I spend a lot of my philanthropic time. I spend it serving on boards. I'm on the Illinois Chamber of Commerce board, supporting big business. We need them for the jobs that they create,
Yep.
and the tax base that they provide, and small business. I'm the Small Business Advocacy Council. A lot of policy issues sometimes, impact small business. And that's the backbone of our society, of our economy, is 80% of the jobs come from small business. So I am very much about economic development because I believe rising tides lift all ships. So thank you for having me. And I hope that this was helpful for someone out there listening.
I hope so too. You guys drop in the comments below. I'd love to know how this information could help you so that we know we're on track to provide what you need, right?
Yes.
So again, Patti Parker, see you later. Thank you so much for listening to my friends in philanthropy. If you'd like to learn more about any of the organizations or services we've talked about, visit myfriendsinphilanthropy.com. You'll find all the links and all the details there or in the description below. If you or someone you know needs support, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you're in a position to give, consider donating or volunteering. Your generosity truly makes a difference. I'm Patti Parker, and I can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you next time.